Thank you so much. Chairman and members of the committee, I am proud to bring before you today a Georgia bill that would institute a Georgia state level version of the federal earned income tax credit that has been in place for many years, at least since the early 1970s, and expanded by Ronald Reagan, supported by Paul Ryan and many others, as a very effective way to encourage work and reduce poverty. We have had this bill, a number of you have been on this committee for a while and have heard me speak of this bill before. So I don't want to take too much time, but no, there's nothing going on down here. Just, So as I said, we have a federal earned income tax credit. In this bill, we're calling ours a Georgia work credit. As I stated, it has been highly effective and proven at providing an incentive to work and a reduction of poverty, along with a lot of other attendant benefits, which I will elaborate on in a minute. It is in place in 31 states. This sometimes is thought of as the quintessential hand up, not hand out, because you get it when you work and you get more the more you work. So it is directly tied to work and provides an incentive to keep working and achieve additional measures of economic security. Almost all of the money is spent on food, transportation, medical expenses, rent, and utilities. It provides an incentive for families to stay in the workforce and climb the economic ladder. It has massive 2 and 3 generation impacts. I want to read to you just a few of the well-researched and well-documented benefits that come through the federal earned income tax credit and would inure to Georgia in doing a Georgia work credit. It promotes work and fuels the economy. It increases workforce participation and encourages low-wage workers to get additional education or training to boost their employability and earning power. For every dollar a recipient earns, they return $1.50 to $2 to the economy. It expands economic security because workers use their tax credit to pay for necessities like groceries, transportation, medical expenses, rent, and utilities. It can also be used to help build savings and establish some financial stability. It increases children's educational performance and attainment. Children in families that receive the work credit score higher on tests, are likelier to graduate from high school, enroll in college, and earn more when they enter the workforce. It improves health outcomes. And let me just repeat as I go through this list that all of this has been researched and proven over and over in many robust studies, which is why it is already in place in 31 states as well as at our federal level. Mothers that had work credit funding were likelier to receive prenatal care and less likely to give birth to premature or low-weight infants. It lowers teen violence and criminal activity. It provides a short-term safety net. You should have a handout that we have prepared, which shows not every county in Georgia, but relevant counties for the members of this esteemed finance committee, so that the members can look at the chart to see how many children would be served in each of the counties that you represent, as well as the additional dollar figures that would be circulating throughout the local economy were we to put this tax credit into place. We have 2 different columns. One is if we did a 10% credit, and the other is if we did a 20% credit. The percentage is based on what percentage of the federal earned income tax credit we would put into effect. At 10%, there would be obviously a lower amount coming back in than at 20%. Different states have done different things in terms of what percentage they have put in with the, as it relates to the federal EITC. And there's also another key decision for policymakers that I do want to mention right now. And that is whether or not you make the work credit refundable or non-refundable. So if it's non-refundable, individuals would receive the work credit only up to the amount that they owe in state taxes. If you owe no state taxes because your income is too low, you would not receive anything. I personally advocate for a refundable one, which means that you would get some benefit even if you owed no taxes. Well, why is that? So if you only do non-refundable, which is still good, let me be clear, and would be a big step forward for Georgia families and lift a whole lot of kids out of poverty, you then miss out on the folks that really need it the most because those families are working, right? Let me again say you only get it if you're working. But if you owe no state tax liability, you're obviously making less than if you owe some, right? So when you don't make it refundable, you lose everyone who really would benefit the very most. So let's see. Let's look at Fulton County. I believe Chairman Beach still lives there, right? Yes, okay. So we have 137,850 children that would benefit by a Georgia work credit in the great county of Fulton. And if we had a 10% match, as some states do, you can see that would add $270 million to the local economy. And, you know, it's not a one-to-one, but $540 million for a 20%. And it has, you know, I mentioned this already, but it's remarkable the amount of research that supports the dramatic hand up, not hand out benefits of this program, which is why it's been expanded on under the Reagan administration, the George W. Bush administration, in policies by Paul Ryan, and is in place in 31 states already because it encourages people to work, which has, as you can imagine, hugely cascading benefits for that family and those children, and goes on throughout the next generation. So that's a brief overview, and I'm happy to answer any. Oh, you know what? I need to tell you a couple more things. I'm sorry. So let's look at the bill really quick. We actually have 3 sections, and then I want to answer questions. So we do have the section 4 of the bill is the work credit that I have been talking about. Section 2 of the bill has a child and dependent care tax credit, which we have written in here as 100% of the federal, which would be a $40 million cost. In section 3, we have a child tax credit. So the first is for child care expenses, which we know from the study done by the Metro Atlanta Chamber. Child care challenges or cost our economy, when they did this study several years ago, about $8 billion. And then the straight up child tax credit, which we have at 25% of the federal credit and the work credit. So all 3 of these are actually in this bill.
Very good. Thank you for bringing this forward. I know you have worked on this diligently, and we've talked about this several times over the years.
Yes.
Do you know if there's been a fiscal note requested for this bill yet?
Yes. Well, let me put it this way. We do have a fiscal note. However, it is for the House version.
Okay. And does the House version have both section 2, 3, and
yes,
4 in it?
Yes, Mr.
Okay.
Chairman, it does.
All right.
Yes.
Do we have a copy of that, Diego, for Chairman Hofstetler yet? Okay. Maybe we could get a copy of that sent over, and usually, our great group of the state auditors, Greg and company, could very quickly, as long as the language is the same, as also just get us the Senate version. But in the short term, at least we'd have something to pass around to folks so they could understand what that
yes,
is.
sir. I can tell you, I mean, I'm looking at what I have.
Okay.
So for the For the work credit, it's essentially it's a $500 million expenditure at 20%.
Okay. And then.
At 20% of the federal.
Okay, and that's obviously if you did a refundable or a non-refundable?
That's refundable.
Refundable, okay.
That's refundable.
And then
yes.
do you have the costs for the child care tax credit as well, or?
I think so, but I think one of our later speakers might have that more handy than I do right this second.
Great.
Oh wait, but I already mentioned that one. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. That one is the one that I mentioned is 40 million.
That's 40, okay.
But I need to get you the document.
Perfect. Okay, great. Thank you. I've got a question from Senator Payne. Oh, sorry. Senator Hickman. I'm sorry. You know, so I just had public safety, and he was sitting right there. So I apologize to you for what that could be construed. So he's much taller. That's right. So, Senator Hickman.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Senator. Senator, I don't mean to, and maybe it's because I've heard so much stuff today on so many different things and all, but I want you to explain a couple of things to me. This is nothing other than me just trying to get my head around it. And I'm a little bit thick-headed right now. On the Senate Research Office form, okay.
I don't have that in front of me, Senator.
Okay.
Goodness.
Looks like to me, I labeled it paragraph 1, 2, and 3 on here, and I can't quite understand because I guess I latched on initially to it says new tax credit for qualified child and dependent care, but then we got work family credit. So we got a couple, 2 or 3 different credits all brought in this same situation. Okay, so if you would kind of walk me through that very slowly.
Yes, thank you. And that is what I had neglected to do straight off the bat and was kind of doing a little quickly at the end. So section 2 of the bill is a child and dependent care expenses credit.
Okay.
And that one,
And that would move from the current 30% to 100%.
that's correct.
Okay, that's number 1.
Yes,
Okay,
that's correct.
okay.
Then number 2 is
Okay.
a 25% of the federal child tax credit. That's in section 2.
So that would be a plus on top of number 1?
They're all 3 different credits.
Okay, so that'd be plus.
Right. And then the work credit, which I spent most of the time discussing, is section 4. And you know, we really saw, I'm sure every member of the committee is aware, we saw a dramatic and steep decline in child poverty when we boosted the child tax credit during COVID.
Right. And this analysis here relates to which one of these credits?
This relates to the Georgia work credit, which is section 4.
Which is number 3 on this list.
Yes.
Correct.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay,
Paragraph, well,
okay,
it's really kind of paragraph
okay,
4 on
okay.
here, but yes,
So
correct.
what we're saying that on the last credit, we're saying theoretically it would have an effect on 628,000 children, and instead of 20%, if it was a 10% tax credit, that's $1 billion. 20% credit would be $2 billion.
That's right. So
Okay, okay. I'm with you now. I'm sorry, I didn't
right,
mean
and these figures are the number of children impacted and at a 10 or 20% of the federal,
Right.
and listed as refundable,
Okay,
as a refundable benefit,
thank
not
you, thank you. I didn't mean to be hard.
not a, no, please.
I wasn't trying
It's,
to be hard, I was just
I
trying to get
mean,
my head around
listen,
it.
you're the one who's a smart accountant.
Thank you.
Tax policy is not my main bailiwick, so.
I've got a question from Senator Rhett. Would you pull the microphone over to you? Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I think he might have answered it. She might have answered it. I was just looking here where it says for each one, if the total amount of the tax credit provided for this code section exceeds the taxpayer income tax liability for a taxable year, the excess funds are refunded to the taxpayer, and I think you pretty
Right,
much addressed
that's for refundability, and as I mentioned, but it bears briefly repeating, the challenge, it is great to do non-refundable. That would be a huge step forward for Georgia families. When you do, however, miss providing this work incentive to the people that are actually more tenuous. And the folks we're talking about are like all at the level of barely hanging on, where if you can provide that It's not a lot of money, but it's extraordinarily meaningful for those folks to keep working as opposed to saying like, I can't, I'm going to give up here.
All right, we've got a few folks lined up to speak here. So if you just want to stay there, we can bring them up
Sure.
just in case
Great.
we've got some
Thank you.
questions. With the small business majority, Rachel, will you come on down here and you can sit right next to Senator Parent?
Good afternoon, Vice Chairman Albers and members of the committee. My name is Rachel Shanklin. I am the Georgia Director for an organization called Small Business Majority. We are a 501c3 small business organization, and we are dedicated to empowering business owners through promoting equitable public policies. We support all business owners, but specifically work with those that have been under-resourced, so minority businesses, women-owned, rural businesses. Our work is bolstered by extensive research and deep connections in the small business community that enable us to educate stakeholders about key issues impacting America's entrepreneurs, with a special focus on the smallest businesses and those facing systemic inequalities. So how would a Georgia Work Credit impact the small business community? To have a truly thriving and equitable recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic, we must put small businesses and self-employed entrepreneurs at the forefront, particularly those in under-resourced communities. Implementing a state EITC would support hardworking Georgians with low to moderate income who work for or own a business, especially boosting their pay. This will in turn send money right back into other local small businesses. And when that money is spent on essential goods and services, it will also flow back into local economies and have immediate financial impacts. This is particularly important to Georgia's small business community because majority of businesses in Georgia are actually solo enterprises. And in 2018, the median income for self-employed individuals at their own unincorporated firms was just $25,064 in 2018, according to the U.S. Small Business Administration. A state EITC would effectively increase take-home income for employees at small businesses that cannot afford to offer higher wages. We talk about all the time that Georgia is the #1 state for business, but small businesses are definitely struggling right now in terms of workforce and retention. So this would definitely help level the playing field for those businesses and small employers with limited resources. Lastly, a statewide poll conducted by our organization in 2021 found that a majority of small businesses support establishing a state earned income tax credit program for low-income employees and self-employed business owners, modeled after the federal EITC program. And then additionally, a recent survey conducted by the University of Georgia and the Georgia Budget and Policy Institute found that 70.4% of Georgians support implementing a state EITC. So essentially, this policy is vital to our economic success because the majority of small businesses are solo enterprises, and they would be able to rely on accessing these funds quickly, and then they would be able to send money right back to the local economy and further support the small business community. So happy to answer any questions, and thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Rachel. Questions from the committee members? Seeing none, thank you so much. Next, with the Georgia Budget and Policy Institute, no stranger to the Senate. Danny, come on down. Good to see you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
That's right. Give
You
him
know-
the time.
Well, thank you.
Is this your
Mr.
first
Chairman.
bill before the committee? No, I'm just kidding. Keep going.
And thank you, Senator Parent, for bringing this bill and to the members of the committee for being here this afternoon. Greatly appreciate your time and hearing SB 118. So all told, the bill before you would put more than $600 million back in the pockets of Georgia families, and I think that is something that we can all support. I would like to primarily focus my remarks on the Georgia Work Credit. And I'll just note that that is a policy that this committee has voted affirmatively on before. Actually, just last year was advanced by this committee as part of HB 1437, voted on by the full Senate, and unfortunately didn't make it all the way through the legislative process. But this is something that certainly has a strong history of bipartisan support, especially in the Senate. And so in total, about 3.3 million Georgians would benefit if we created a state-level earned income tax credit, which I'll refer to as the Georgia Work Credit. That includes the families of 1.4 million children and encompasses about a quarter of all tax filers in Georgia. So a huge impact. And about 80% of those who receive the EITC are parents. And really, the policy is designed in many ways to address childhood poverty and for families and to help folks work their way into the middle class. So as Senator Parent said, 31 other states have created their own versions of the EITC, matching the federal program that has been in place for now about 40 years and has been tremendously successful. There's an enormous body of research that supports many of the things that Senator Parent said. And I will also note that the EITC is designed to phase out at about $64,000 of income. And that helps avoid many of the problems that we see in other programs that create a benefits cliff and truly does help folks work their way up into the middle class. And finally, I'd like to note that last month we commissioned a poll from the University of Georgia, a very strongly representative sample of about 1,100 registered voters, and found that over 70% of Georgians support creating a refundable earned income tax credit similar to the one that is in the bill before you. That support carries over to a very strong majority. Over 65% of Republicans, over 65% of self-identified conservatives and independents similarly support that policy. So that is a rare, very strong bipartisan majority where Georgians want to see this created. So with that, I will pause for any questions, and again, greatly appreciate the committee hearing this bill and allowing testimony today.
Thank you, Dan. Any questions? Seeing none, we appreciate it. And I could say the best for last here with the Atlanta Community Food Bank.
Thank you.
Miss Megan Middleton, come on down. You're our final contestant of the day.
Good afternoon. Not sure how to do this when the chairman and the vice chair are here, but in separate seats, or So, I'm Megan Middleton. I'm the director of government affairs for the Atlanta Community Food Bank, and chairman, vice chairman, senators. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. Senator Parent, thank you for introducing this bill. And I'd like to just call out here too that of the members, there are 8 members of this committee that are in our Atlanta Community Food Bank service area, which we serve 29 counties. So Senators Albers, Beach, Huffstetler, and Rhett, you all are in our service area. So thank you all very much. As the previous speakers talked about, we are in support of the Georgia Work Credit bill. We have been in support of this policy for some years now, and are looking forward to seeing this advance again. At the Atlanta Community Food Bank, like I said, we have a 29 county service area. And in the last fiscal year 22, we served over 79.3 million meals and grocery products. So our distribution is up. It is up still above pre-pandemic levels, and that's a lot of people that we do serve. 23% of the food and grocery items we distributed was fresh produce, and we are members that we participate in the Georgia Farm to Food Banks program that's handled out of the Department of Agriculture. So in this, also another statistic here in Georgia, these are recent numbers from a Map the Meal Gap study done by Feeding America, which we are a member of. And in Georgia, 1 in 9 people are food insecure, 1 in 8 children are food insecure, and 1 in 11 seniors over the age of 60 are food insecure. So we all represent those people. That is the entire state of Georgia. So we are very interested in this bill to see how it could help low-income working families. So like I said, we've been part of this coalition to move this policy forward in the past. We know that it will help those low-income working families who just need an additional help, that will, additional amount of money, that it's part of, we see part of what they're already earning, because it's the, working in earned income tax credit, so they must be working, and that amount of money, like Senator Parent said, it's not a lot of money, but it can mean a lot. It can mean the difference between getting their car fixed. It can mean the difference of being able to pay for an additional month or two of childcare. It pushes them over that to a point where they're able to continue with whatever they're working on, either to get past a bump in the road. And we're there. We supply food with the 700 food partners that we work with within our 29 county area. But we want them to rely on us for that. But this will help them for those other things that we can't help them with, and that that, like I said, the car repair, maybe a fee or a licensing fee that they need to get maybe certification for a better job, or to apply for college or training. That amount of money that they could get, in this yearly earned income tax credit could really help them. So, and as was stated earlier, this is money that is then put back into the local economy. So it helps the local businesses, the local store. They also get money from that. So, like I said, we really support this bill. It helps the low-income working families. It's money that's spent in local communities, and it is direct to working families, unlike some other programs, which are great programs, but this is one that goes directly to them. So we are in support of this, and I'll answer any questions.
Thank you, Megan, for your comments, but also the great work by the Atlanta Community Food Bank. I know we all get to benefit from the grace and goodness that you're doing. Questions from the committee members for Megan? All right. So, Senator Parent, we'll give you a minute to close out here. I know we're going to be anxious to see the fiscal note when it is available. Are there any final comments you want to make before we close out today?
Sure. Am I on? Yes. Well, thank you, Vice Chairman Albers. And yes, we will get all the fiscal note data over to the chairman's office so that we have it and everyone can operate with full information, because that's, of course, critical in any of our financial and policy decision making. I do want to thank Chairman Huffstetler for hearing this bill and for his recognition over a number of years that this is a program that pays extraordinary dividends to, as Megan was saying, help individuals stay in the workforce, which has just cascading benefits throughout the state.
Thank you. And our esteemed chairman, who was juggling between the health committee, just made it back. So,
I think we got a bunch of
Mr.
health
Chairman,
committee people.
to you, sir.
Yes.
I just wanted to say I apologize for being late. We had some very controversial bills in healthcare.
You don't say.
We've talked similar things before. We've had something similar in a Senate version of a bill, and this is almost like our appropriations chairman process. At the end, there'll be something that looks at the revenue and income on a bigger package and decide what we do on that. So that's the process we face near the end. It's hard to do these things on a standalone without looking at the big picture. That's generally how they do it over in the House that we'll have to negotiate with.
Understood. And thank you for all your work.
And I enjoy sitting over here a little bit every once in a while.
Yeah, I know, right? Takes the pressure off.
Yeah.
All right. Well, on that note, this meeting's hereby adjourned. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you.